Welcome back to another edition of Inside Outlook. I'm Tony Trongone, Superintendent of Pemberton Township Schools. In this edition, we're going to address school security and how we address terroristic threats in the district. And with us today, I'm blessed to have our Chief of Police of Pemberton Township, Mr. Dave Jantas.
Good morning.
Welcome. And our Chief of Security of Pemberton Township Schools, Mr. Joe Bowen. Welcome.
Good morning, Tony.
I have a few questions for you guys.
Sure.
I'll start off with you, Mr. Bowen. When a verbal threat to a school as a whole is made, what action steps are taken, who gets involved, and at what level is the local police department brought in?
All right, so taking a threat could be received by the school district in different forms. It could be by way of a student making a notification to an administrator. It could be a call from a parent. It could be something that's posted on social media. When we receive the threat, we sit down, speak with the building administrator, formulate a plan on how we're going to respond to it. If we can attribute it to a particular student, we bring the student in, we speak to them. Depending on the answers that we get, could determine that perhaps we use a district policy threat assessment, where we bring in parents, we bring in other staff members, school counselors, and we sit down as a group and we discuss the threat that was made and how we should address it. Almost every single time, by that point, if we do a threat assessment, we've involved the local police department. But at no time do we ever have a threat and not bring it to the police department.
I understand that, but I need to know the difference between when you have a threat assessment that is some type of behavior in the school, and then like someone's going to have a terroristic threat to the school, like the difference between the two. So if there is I'm going to blow up the school, I'm going to shoot up the school, what type of assessment goes on then? That's why I think the public would want to know.
So if it's a threat that gives any sense of immediacy, the first call is to the police department.
Okay.
We get the police department involved from the get-go.
Okay.
And then the schools will need assistance with looking into that generally anyway. We have to be notified, and we, especially when there's an off-hours type threat where Mr. Bowen or myself or someone from the public will come across a threat and let us know and communicate that, and we'll dedicate the resources that we need to dedicate to investigating that threat to see if it's possible, if it's a realistic threat. Would you agree that we have to take further action on?
So you could tell me a little bit more about the coordination between the school district and the police department when this is going on, like what's going on between the two entities.
So when the threat comes in, and it's determined that it's a threat that requires an immediate notification to the police department, that communication is done by myself. I'll reach out to Chief Jantas or one of his command staff officers, and they always assign usually a detective and patrol officers to come to the building and assist us in formulating a plan on how to respond to the threat, how to assist us in conducting interviews with students and parents. And as I said, if it rises to the level where we need to do a threat assessment, they participate in the threat assessment as well.
And I think Joe just brought up a key point, and the communication with the school district, especially in incidents where there might be a threat to the schools, is exemplary. Joe has my personal number, he has the numbers of my command staff, and more importantly, he has the number to the sergeant or supervisor that's working the road, that if there is an immediate threat and something has to happen right now, he knows he can call any one of those entities 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and of course he's got access to central communications as well. If any of those four areas were to fail, he has communication. So I'm very proud of that, and the communication that we've had since Joe's come on board these past few years, that the relationship and the communication has been so very good.
Right. Now there's that communication and that whole process of the investigation and the communication between the two, the police department and then you and then your department of security. But now what about as far as getting communication out? Because I think I have emails sent to me about when am I going to be notified as a parent? When am I going to be notified as a staff member? When am I going to be notified? And so can you please explain how that unfolds to that communication to a reasonable person about there was a threat at a school and how we get the word out?
Initially, we need to determine whether or not the threat is a valid threat. So it's not an immediate response to parents, but we We absolutely, and staff as well, we
Why
absolutely.
isn't it immediate, though?
It could be something as simple as, two students having an altercation and during that altercation, one student saying something that is inappropriate. So we need to determine whether inappropriate is inappropriate or whether inappropriate has some validity to it, where we have some concern that there may be something further to it, some more meat on the bones that would put staff, students, or the public at large in jeopardy.
Okay.
And when we get to we remember in the early days of dealing with threats when a student would come to school with a nail file. Well, what was the reason for bringing the nail file? Was it a mistake that was left in a bag, it was in a pocket, or whatever the case may be? We have to give this time for it to be investigated to see what the student's motives were. Of course, we take every threat that's given seriously, but there's also a common sense element to this, that we want to look at it, working together to see if there's something where the police actually have to take it up another level, or does Mr. Bowen and his people deal with it as a disciplinary issue?
So the previous 3 questions dealt with like a threat to the school, a verbal threat. And I think the public wants to know more about what we're doing in the district. So if you forgive me, I want to talk about something in regards to since for the past 6 or 7 months, we've been doing practicing lockdowns. We had the Homeland Security here with the county prosecutor's office, with the state. What's that office called again? Office of School Preparedness?
School preparedness.
So they were here, and so I want to hand it back off to you. Like, moving forward, what have we done since you've been here? Like, what have we had before, like in the past, because Chief Jantas has been here for many years. What was existing? What are some things we're putting in place, and what are we going to do moving forward to even continuously improve our school security?
Well, I'd like to say that we, as a district, are always looking to improve security. What we've tried to do as a district is to look at using other events in the country, other unfortunate events where we've had school shootings or similar type disasters, and looking at what happened there and then matching them up against what we do.
So what have we done to date so far? You've been here.
Well, as you
2
pointed
years.
out, the Office of School Preparedness came down in September and did some unannounced drills just to give us an idea of where we are, where they thought we are as far as being prepared for issues in our buildings. And we took that model. They went to 2 schools. We took that model and simulated it across every building in the district, and gave people in the building, administrators and staff members, an opportunity to see what happens in a drill from a different perspective. So from that, we've tightened up our policies. We've changed our policies a bit to reflect the change in times, and formulated some new policies and procedures on how to do drills.
So you mentioned the policies and drills, but there were also, when I was visiting with you, there were things like doors, like there were maintenance issues. Like I always say, the devil's in the details. So tell us some things you've been doing with all the I know we're not allowed to tell the public your specific protocols on a lockdown.
Yes, sir.
But what are some things that we picked up so the public knows we've been doing this from a daily basis,
Right.
improving, like a door that doesn't shut properly, right?
What we've done is we went building to building and found, as you would imagine with a large building, multiply by the number of buildings that we have, there were maintenance issues that perhaps would prohibit a door from closing properly and locking properly. And all of those deficiencies were identified and then addressed by the maintenance staff, addressed by outside vendors to get us up to where we need to be. So now I can safely say that every one of our buildings is in compliance with being prepared for a worst case scenario.
And that's also why you exercise a plan. You can have the plan in paper form, and everybody could be aware of it, but until you drive it around and you try it out, you don't know what's going to fail and what's going to work. And that's what Joe is doing with that now. Now, what Joe and I are working on, and we haven't done active shooter drills in the schools for a couple of years now because of some manning and scheduling issues. But now that our manpower has come back up, we're planning some actual activity in the schools to get the newer officers familiar with the buildings, familiar with the procedures, and so that they're ready. Listen, they have to be ready no matter what they might find themselves going into an unfamiliar building. But still, we have to practice it. Just like the staff has to practice their procedures, we have to practice ours, and we have to work together to get that stuff done.
I'd like to add, Mr. Trongone, that we spent a significant amount of money over the last year upgrading our camera system, instilling that all of our panic alarms in every school office work properly, so that when a panic alarm is pushed, it goes right to a dispatch center and the police are notified immediately.
So that wasn't working before?
Not as well as they should have,
Okay.
but they are working now, and we have tested them, and we test them every time we do a lockdown drill. We test them.
As far as the coordination with like a lockdown procedure, is that something we're going to be dealing with? 'Cause I think parents get a little, well, even with the latest school threat, and they see cop cars out front, right? They think, God forbid, something's wrong with my child. So I think we're going to simulate, we're going to work with a simulation, and we haven't done that for a while, right?
We haven't done it for a while, and again, we had some challenges that we had to overcome, one of them being manning and the schedule that the police department is working to get those training opportunities that just weren't coming for us. It was, the amount of calls haven't gone down, but the number of officers have. So there were some unique challenges, but those are being addressed and successfully addressed. But we have plans, and we have, for instance, it wasn't too long ago that I sent one of my sergeants to observe a drill that was going on in the schools, and I think it was specifically a lockdown drill.
Right.
And there was some terminology that was in your policy and with your procedures that the sergeant was not familiar with. It wasn't that it wasn't a workable policy, but here's where we have to get the guys on the street used to working with the staff and the people at the schools so that they're talking the same language and they know what the people in the schools are going to do when the police arrive, should there be the horrible incident of some sort of critical incident that goes on in one of the schools. So we're working to make that happen. We've sent people more regularly. When the state came down, I believe we sent people to observe what was going on with that. So that's one of the things Joe and I have worked out for future endeavors to increase the confidence in our school security plans.
And that goes to an earlier question. Chief Jantas and I, we speak regularly, perhaps once or twice a week, and then we try to get together for a breakfast or a lunch meeting.
Yes.
To have some extended sit-down time. And it's a constant flow of information. You know, I may give him a change in policy or a change in how we're doing things so that he gets it out to his staff, constantly getting information back from the police department as it relates to information that they received has to be investigated, and they have to follow their policies and procedures. But there's a constant flow of not only information, but I'd like to say, for lack of a better word, intelligence. You know, that if they have information that's pertinent to us and they've vetted everything that they need to do and it's appropriate, they certainly let us know.
And one of the initiatives that Joe started right on the heels of one of the state visits, the state evaluations, is that at the police department we had access cards for every school, but it was centrally located. Well, Joe saw it better that every officer that wears a uniform or is a detective in my agency has their own card, to include the chief of police. It's in my wallet right now. So Joe made sure that every one of my guys had swipe cards. So if there is a lockdown and we have to get into the schools, we can, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
It's great to hear. And also cameras, too. We're working on that moving forward?
Yeah, there's we work, the police department, school districts in the state of New Jersey, along with county prosecutors' offices, have what's called an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, and it spells out what's expected to occur between the three different entities as far as communication and reporting and things along those lines. And a new part of that MOU that came out this year was it gave us the ability as a school district and school districts statewide to allow local police departments to have access to our video camera system. So that's not just at the police station, but it also could at some point in time morph into a police car. So say, for example, that we had a active shooter situation in one of our buildings. If when we get to that point, a responding officer could look at that video feed in his car in the parking lot and see what's going on in the building. It's something that is long overdue, and in the end will be invaluable.
Right, an incredible asset to any responding officer or somebody that's running a command post to radio to his people where the threat is, where people are moving to, where there might be injured. We do have some technology issues that we have to overcome with that. There's a computer in every car, but you have video running just for the officers, and now we have body cams coming, then there's going to be e-ticketing. There's so many things that go on, that's the officer's office. So we have to see how that's going to work. And initially, we just talked this morning about getting it at a minimum set up at a desktop PC in the police station, so that if we have to set up a command post in the station, that we would be able to feed information out to the officers that are responding.
Great, we'll get that started right away then.
And just one more thing I'd like to add. We've all read and heard about the recent tragedies in Parkland School in Florida. And one of the things, and I won't get into too many details, but one of the things that came out of that was that the responding police department eventually got access to the cameras inside the building and didn't know that the cameras were on a 20-minute delay. So everything that they were looking at had occurred 20 minutes previously. I have extreme confidence in our system, our video system. It's been phenomenal. It was phenomenal when I started here, and with you and the school board's permission, we upgraded a lot of different facets of that system to the point where I think we have one of the best in the area.
So there is an incident, and I've been here now for almost 3 years, and so what we know is that parents descend upon the scene, wherever the building is, and the natural reaction, emotional reaction is to, I want my child back, and there might be a breach of the incident command line, and so I think we have to let parents know more about what their role is if there is a critical incident. Well,
we again, using Parkland, we saw that the video replays of parents descending upon the building. Natural reaction, I want my child. I want to make sure my child's safe. As a district, every school building has, I'm going to pull a copy out. Every school building has an emergency plan that the school building itself is familiar with, the district administration is familiar with, and the police department is familiar with. So that should we have an emergency, there is a plan set, there's a policy set on how we will reunify parents and children. But the plan has to be followed because the safety of the students is our primary concern. We want to get them back to the parents. If this should ever happen here, we want to make sure we get them back to the parents. We want to make sure that the parents know that they're safe. But we need to do that in an orderly fashion so that we make sure everybody stays safe in the interim.
Listen, it would be an understatement to say that the parents are going to be frightened. That would be the understatement of the year if something like this was going on. But if you can just for a moment take a breath and say, okay, if I drive to the school, think about the resources I'm taking away from law enforcement and first responders to handle traffic issues, to funnel people that are trying to get into different areas of the school. Then we think that parent could be a threat, so we have to deal with that instead of dealing with what is actually causing the critical incident in a school building or any facility for that matter. So while it's easier to sit in this chair right now and say, I ask for your patience and Joe asks for your patience so we can do the things we need to do to keep your kids and the faculty safe, it's what we need from you. And we really need the public's patience on this and trust that we're going to do the things to keep your kids safe.
And I think that listening to both of you, I love that, but I think that also I'm thinking as the parent, and you said the trust and the confidence in us. And I think that's something that we're going to have to work on across the country, not Pemberton in particular, in regard to knowing we have a plan, we're going to follow out that plan, whether it be students are part of the plan, the teachers are part of the plan, the administration is part of the plan, security is a part of the plan, the police department is part of the plan. And so those parents need to have that confidence when they arrive at that scene that we have our act together. That's what I think too. It's a two-handed approach as far as our hand is real heavy, what we have to do, but on the parents' hand to say, I have confidence in what we're doing at the school. We're going to handle it appropriately.
And in this plan, there's a section that mandates we have good lines of communication to the parents as this is unfolding.
All right, well, I want to thank the both of you for joining me today.
A pleasure.
And again, I think it's about the public confidence, and I know I got to speak for myself. I apologize, but I have grandchildren. They'll be going to schools, and I know I have to feel in my heart about how safe they're going to be. Kids are that's a whole new paradigm shift in regards to schools and being safe and sending their bundles of gold to school. And we have gentlemen like you to help us look to continuously improve school security. And knowing that if somebody is just so motivated to do something, we have to do our best to mitigate whatever is happening at that situation. I think that that's one thing the public has to understand. Your job is to mitigate that whatever's going to happen, because as we're finding out, like in Florida, they don't come through the front door.
Correct.
So if they want to get in, they can, and we have to be prepared. It's an unbelievable task, but to look at all facets of a building and then wherever we need to address the breach. So I want to say thank you.
And if I just may take this opportunity, parents, public, as we talked about with the Florida shooting, looking at video accounts of interviews with people that were there, students and the public as well, there was a lot of information that perhaps could have averted the situation had that information been forwarded. I know that some of it was forwarded and not looked at, but generally these things start outside of a school building. Somebody talks about it, somebody posts social media comments. So if you should ever have any question, if you see something that concerns you as a parent, as a community member, please make sure that information gets forwarded to the police department or to the school district. We want the information, we need the information. It's how we're going to stop a situation like that from ever happening here in Pemberton.
And so to add to that, just simply put, it'll be you see something or you hear something, say something. It's obviously we're having this session, and we value school security before the event in Florida, and we're going to continue to improve our security measures. And again, and so you can reach our school website for our email addresses and also our phone numbers. Also, Chief Jantas is always has his reputation as far as being available to the community is unbelievable too. So I want to say thank you for joining us today, and stay tuned for another episode of Inside Outlook. Thank you.